Welcome to Showboys, a podcast that delves into the world of film and TV. Hosts Nick and Mike take their water cooler talk from the office to the web as they discuss their favorite movies, shows, and all their content in between. In this week's episode, the boys take a trip back in time and reminisce about the fascinating worlds and lifestyles throughout different times in history and how they are used to tell stories. So, what's a period piece? Hello and welcome to another episode of Showboys. My name is Mike. I'm your host and joined, as always, with my good friend Nick. How you doing, Nick?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. I'm excited about our chat tonight.
No, this should be a good one. I
Yeah,
actually took notes.
Ooh. Oh man, it's gonna be a good one. Nick came prepared. But yeah, before we jump into the meat of the episode, I just wanted to remind you guys that we have a YouTube page along with all of the other platforms that we're on, Google, Apple, Spotify, Anchor. There's a host of others too. But yeah, we just wanted to remind you that we do have a YouTube page, and we're really trying to hit the 100 subscriber mark so we can get a fancy custom URL to make it easier for people to find us. We're quite a bit of ways away from 100, but the good news is subscribing to channels on YouTube is totally free. So just head over to our YouTube channel, which we can include the link to on our social media post, and click the subscribe button, click the notification button so you can always be in the know whenever we upload something new. And thank you for following us on Facebook and listening to our episodes. We really appreciate it. We need those subs, those sweet subs.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'll include the link to our YouTube channel in our YouTube videos, but that
Right.
really doesn't make sense.
Yeah, where we include the links to everything else we normally talk about, including the link to our YouTube channel and our YouTube video might be a little.
The video you're watching right now has a link to the video you're watching right now.
Yeah, just click that and then
Just
subscribe.
watch it again for at least 30 seconds so it gets a view. But yeah, definitely YouTube. That's a tall hill to climb, but I think it's a good one just because YouTube's the place. I know we hang out on it a lot. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for our second Mandalorian Companion Series episode, where we'll be covering everything about episode 2 of The Mandalorian. And other than that,
and that first episode was so fun. I was so excited to do it.
yeah, no, it's good time hopping and skipping through the different timelines here. It's a lot to manage. Craig helps us out though. He always he's a good bookkeeper when it comes to multiple dimensions.
I don't know where we'd be without Craig. He said we should get him a microphone one of these days.
Yeah, but he really just needs to lift himself up and buy himself the equipment.
True.
But he does a lot. He doesn't really say much though,
Yeah. Good point. We got all that stuff out of the way. Thank you for listening to our pleas and cries for subs. What do you want to talk about tonight, Nick?
Tonight I think we jumped around on a few ideas. The first idea was a big stinker, so we scrapped it and went with something just a little bit more fitting. Um, and I think we're gonna, we're definitely starting this theme where we're just gonna dig into our own episodes and pull out new ideas for new episodes. So it was pretty easy. We have said period pieces quite a bit of times at this point. So it was only natural that we just have at least our first EP on period pieces. Um, it those being a very wide genre, because obviously a period piece can be anything from at this point, even like the 2000s, yikes, all the way back to beginning of time. So I think there's some news out there, and we're gonna kind of hone in, to start off here with some Viking stuff. I think,
Yeah, you can't go wrong with Vikings. But yeah, maybe we can define what a period piece or a period drama is in case we have listeners who aren't as obsessed with this particular genre as we are. I just kind of looked it up, and it is a television or film production set in a particular historical period and characterized by the use of costumes, sets, and props that are typical of the era. So, a lot of these period dramas, period pieces, whatever you prefer to call them, um, are historic in some sense of the word. Um, a lot of them are fictionalized. Some of them do a cool job of tying in, you know, reality and actual historic events with, some loose fiction and dramatization. So it's not super dry. But yeah, like I guess what really draws you in particular to these types of shows and movies, Nick?
I was just thinking about that as you define period pieces, and I think a big thing about period pieces is the world building, and I think the world building is especially strong in these is because you're talking about, usually you're set in a time in a setting in a world that isn't very familiar oftentimes to all the viewers. So they put a lot of emphasis on costume design, the environment, what the world looks like, more so than they would on a show that's set, within the last 10 years of present day, because there's a lot of things we just assume everyone knows, right? So if you set a show up in, you know, today, everyone knows we have cell phones. Everyone knows, there's Facebook and social media is the biggest thing ever, and modern day politics. So there's like a lot of assumptions that are baked in to shows and movies set in present day. But when you have to step back, more than 20 years, you have to do a little extra, and even the further back you go, a little extra to really set up your stage.
Yeah, I really enjoy the ones that the types of shows or movies that try very hard to be as accurate as possible. Um, that just kind of sorry, hit the old microphone there.
Heard the spring.
Yeah. Uh, but like that attention to detail kind of almost, teaches you things about, maybe how life was back in 1890 or, you know, whatever time period we're watching or whatever. And just like seeing how people lived or how people would do what we would consider like mundane everyday, like typical tasks like that are just as common and brainless as breathing for us, right? Like you come downstairs and you like flip on the light switch and then all of a sudden you have light, or like you go and like pop a waffle in the toaster in the morning and you have breakfast. But like seeing how people have to go and actually like hunt food and like how they would prepare their catch and things like that, I think kind of adds a layer of intrigue, I guess, when I'm watching these. Does that make sense at all, or am I just like super weird?
No, I mean that makes sense. I mean it's just the attention to detail that is more interesting, right, to us than stuff in modern day. Because I mean, say you're like modern day New York, it's a movie, right? And they're not going to take time, or even if they do take time, they might not pay attention to it. But if the scene is on the street of New York and there's someone doing like some homeless action over across the street, or everyone's dressed a certain way, I feel like we just kind of look past that because it just looks right, because that's what we expect because we're familiar with it. Whereas you set up a scene in either science fiction, or you set up a scene in historic 1800s Roman times, you're paying attention to those details because you're like, oh man, look at how they're dressed, or look at how the fruit vendor is set up, or like in the
Yeah.
marketplace. So you're just paying attention to all these details because it's new and it's refreshing, because it's just not part of, like you said, that mundane. We get it, like, oh, they're driving a motorcycle, or it's a car chase through a, I don't know, through a mall or something. You're
Yeah.
not looking at all those details.
Yeah, and like when you started talking about a city, it made me think about some of a lot of, well, I wouldn't say a lot, but like, at least two or three of the shows that I've really enjoyed during in this genre um take place during like the fur trading time. Uh so like, that's early on in America's history, right? So obviously it's all undeveloped, like just wilderness, right? So even though we live in Ohio and not particularly in a large city or anything, we don't live in the wilderness, right? So like just seeing the shots in the woods, and like the big um you know scene transitions where you're just like flying above this huge like plain or mountain range. You know what I'm talking about? Just like the scenery itself is just like so awesome. You're like, I don't get to see stuff like that. Like, I wonder what life would have been like, you know, living in that time where, everything is undeveloped and you just got to kind of like make it work, right?
Yeah,
Maybe
and
it's
that's
some like weird um fantasy, I guess, where sometimes I'll just be like sitting out alone, sadly, in my fire pit in the backyard, typically on Saturday nights, just sitting there watching the fire. And I'll just be like, man, people used to like just be nomads and roam around. And like their only worries in life were, am I going to catch enough food for dinner tonight? And like, where am I going to sleep? And how am I going to stay warm? You don't have all the added stress of like, can I pay my bills? I got to go to work, blah, 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 whatever, our current society like stressors are, right? So
yeah, and I
there's
think
there's
that's a
something like intriguing to me about that.
yeah, and I mean it's just like what you're saying about like the flyovers of the wilderness, right, or some big forest, or the fur trade country in northern North America. Um, they do, in movies today, set in present day, they do flyovers of our cities. But once again, that's not particularly interesting because it's familiar to us.
Right.
So the same shot, right? Some flyover scene transition where they're like Pan City of Los Angeles, or in a period piece, Pan the Great Frontier, has a different
Yeah.
effect because of the setting and the time.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot that like gets your imagination like running. and like the show's just outside of the plot lines and the story arcs and the characters and stuff, just like there's things there that make you think about the the tertiary things, right? Like everything we've been talking about. How did they survive, you know? Like when they talk about having to travel from like one settlement to another, like it might just be, 20 or 30 miles away, but they have to walk, right? So just like travel is mind blowing when you sit back and think about it and be like, oh dang, it's like January and they have to go to this other settlement, and like all they have is fur, from the beavers or whatever that they've been skinning, and they have to, I don't know. There's just like so many secondary and tertiary things outside of the stories that get my brain going.
Yeah, and it's just that attention to detail and more to think about. You're not just the plot. The main plot story arc is obviously important, but there's time spent building this world. And I mean, and one thing that I think period pieces might fall into a trap. It's a trap for me. When they set up like the first season or even the first few episodes covering this stuff, but then they stop because they already did it, right? So that attention to detail starts to fade over time.
Do you have any like specific examples?
I mean, a specific example, particularly in the show Vikings from the History Channel.
Hmm.
The first season, obviously the characters are in a much different place in life, right? So they start off as like they're just like simple farmers, and the main character basically rises to challenge, and he wants to be the leader of the local Viking tribe, right? So, spoiler alert: once that is accomplished in the first season, um, they no longer focus on those aspects of Viking life where they're just like farming and they're just like creating weapons and kind of just like having that time with your son showing him how to like swing a sword. Like those details start to like slip and they then focus on like another set of details. It might be necessary for the where the characters are in the plot in the story, but to me, the first season had a much different world building experience than the later seasons. And just progressively as time went on, less time was spent toward that. And to the point where at the beginning of every season, they would just show like a overarching pan of where the town was, where it kind of was like a little village and it turned to a town. Then it, in the later seasons is a big city. But they kind of just it fell to the wayside as far as the detail of how everyday life was.
Mm.
So it
Hate to
started
see
off,
it.
yeah, it started off really strong doing that, but then obviously as like the plot gets more complicated, the characters have more stuff going on, they're telling all these other interweave stories, that takes precedence over um, the world building, which is fine. It's okay, but I feel like it can be a weak point in these where they just kind of evolve into soap opera dramas.
Right. Yeah. So I definitely want to talk about Vikings, not necessarily the show, but just Vikings in general. But I I broke out my notes, which aren't, I guess you could consider them notes, into like three categories. I have period pieces that I've watched completely, like I've finished either the entire series or I'm like completely caught up with what's currently released. Then I have period pieces that I want to watch that either like I haven't gotten around to watching or they haven't come out yet. And then I have period piece games, which hopefully we can get into later. Excuse me, I gotta clear my throat. 1 second. Sorry about that. Holy cow. But yeah, so Vikings, the show, is on my period pieces that I want to watch, but I haven't yet. Um, with that being said, the issue that you just talked about, is it like enough to like, should I scratch that off my list or should I actually watch it?
No, you should actually watch it because it's effective enough in the first season. It's just the idea that over time it degrades. Not
Mm.
that it degrades terribly in that. It actually evolves well with the story. It's just something that does happen, and some degrade faster than others.
So
Um,
it doesn't detract from the story or plot, does it?
no, no, not that show in particular. No.
Okay, well that's good.
And I mean, and typically you can attribute that to, and this happens a lot. I think Netflix does it with a few. Like I think there's a show called Rain, and it's kind of like set in maybe 1400s France, and obviously I think from the get go it's intended to be very um, soap opera like, right?
Yeah.
Where it's just purely a drama, but at the beginning of it and throughout it, it has those world building details, but they quickly fade, right? More so than Vikings, but in that show they quickly fade into the foreground, and all they're doing is just like the drama of who slept with who killed who, who talked bad or betrayed so and so. That kind of thing takes way front and center.
Mhm.
So I definitely just feel like it's more rare to see that consistent world building and attention to detail in these shows.
So basically,
Definitely watch Vikings.
okay. Um, but that Rain show you're talking about is basically pretty much The Walking Dead, where,
Yeah, it might be even more degrading than The Walking
oh,
Dead.
you hate to see that because, like,
Yeah,
I loved The Walking Dead, so good, but then it literally just turned into a soap opera that like a zombie would occasionally like waltz through the background, right? So it got the zombie genre tag, but it was basically just like a giant like Days of Our Lives series after like season two.
exactly. So like
Yeah.
Rain, I would say that happened after maybe like episode 3 or 4,
Mm,
if I were to guess. I haven't watched it like consistently, but it's something Aaron was watching, and I would pick up parts of it.
interesting.
So like
So,
there, when I would like watch like parts of it, I would be like, oh, they're doing a little bit of world building. They're touching on a subject relevant to the time, right? Maybe like how they utilize castles, or the order of things, servants and stuff like that. But as soon as they touch on it, that just is gone, and it's the drama part.
yeah. Yeah, that's sad. But back to Vikings. Um, I haven't watched the show Vikings, but one of my favorite shows is called The Last Kingdom, which is about Vikings. Um, I know I've told you about it before, uh, and I know you've seen at least a few episodes, but have you seen the entire series or like a season of it?
No, it's on my list, especially after kind of like doing some notes for tonight.
Okay. Yeah, because I was gonna ask you if you had seen enough of it to compare it to Vikings to kind of like see which one. I mean, not necessarily which one was
um,
better, but like what differences they might have. You know what I'm saying?
I think I know enough to give a little bit of at least a very initial observation there. So Vikings follows real life characters, for the most part, at least real life stories that have been passed down of characters. So the main character is Ragnar, and he's a pretty popular story, person in Norse mythology and
Right.
legend.
Right.
So I would say Vikings on History Channel leans more toward the mystery and kind of storytelling elements where these are like larger than life characters
Hmm.
where like they're kind of more hero-esque placed in they're normalized heroes. So they have like normal problems and they're
Right.
very much human, but they are to the outside ethos in that universe like these larger than life characters because
I
they're this
think
famous. Whereas I think The Last Kingdom is a little bit more grounded than that.
I remember because you watched at least the first episode with me at my house one night. And I think we had a conversation and it was a while ago, so I might be misremembering. But I feel like either one of us had mentioned that The Last Kingdom kind of follows along the like English side of the story of the Danes like invading England. And whereas I think you were saying like the Vikings show obviously follows the Vikings and like the Danish people's side of the story. Is Vikings like telling the story of like the invasion of England and stuff like that? Or is it just kind of like Viking stuff?
So Vikings on History Channel, it contextualizes and dramatizes the like landmark stories of the Viking culture.
Oh, okay.
So basically, quick recap, humble beginnings, right? Farmers turned into like badass warriors, right? Who then
Hmm.
set sail and figure out how to like build these ships that can cross the water. Then they find England. So then there's like a season or two where they're like, let's raid England. There's a point where they go to the Mediterranean on a little side thing. There's a point where they invade France, like Paris itself, like sail up the river.
Oh,
So
nice.
it's very wide. It's a very overarching, and there's like multiple things going on in different parts of Greater Europe. So they're definitely hitting those larger tales of Viking legacy. Um, whereas, like you said, um, the Last Kingdom is more so a focused story about characters in a little bit smaller corner of that period.
Yeah, so like the summary of Last Kingdom, basically you follow a character named Uhtred who actually is an Englishman, but he's also no, no, no. Uh, it's been a while. Sorry. He's like part English and part Danish. His father's village gets raided, or no, the village itself doesn't get raided. I'm doing a terrible job of summarizing this and
Terrible
speaking. I'm
bad.
doing a terrible bad. Big bads are happening right now. Uh, his father's uh, army for their village marches out to try to attack a Danish army of Vikings who are making their way through um, their area of England. And the Viking army wins, obviously, because they're brutal army. Um, and Uhtred is like a probably 10, maybe younger than 10 at the time, and he like sneaks out and follows his village's army to battle. And the Danes, after they win, they take Uhtred, and because they're not that savage to like kill children, instead they just enslave him. Um, so they take Uhtred to their village and kind of like raise him as one of their own. So later on, he decides through a series of events that he wants to go back and reclaim his village that is rightfully his from his father. And so it's an interesting story about a character who is like literally right in the middle of this giant battle that's going on for England. and he like fights a lot with the English army and King Edward, and but then also fights alongside the Danes at certain points, and it's super interesting. But it's very much told just like his story in this huge, like, overarching years long battle for England.
Right. Yeah. So I think this might spend, you know, that's like the main plot point for like two season 2 and 3, I think, for Vikings. But they tell it from a little different of a perspective with different characters. There might be some character overlap. I think I noticed on the English side there was definite overlap, but the emphasis on the English characters were different.
Nice.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Last
So
Kingdom is pretty funny because like it's basically just the English people being like, we need to convert those heathens who are raiding our lands, and then like the Vikings are just like, bro, like just stop. Like we want a place where we can farm, and unfortunately that's here.
does
So
it
it's like
does it have like comedy elements or
no.
no?
Well, I mean, there's a couple characters that are like the comic relief, but it's very much a drama and like action oriented. But there are some like humorous parts, and there are a character or two that I can think of off the top of my head that are kind of funny.
Yeah.
Um,
The
but
filming's a little different from what I noticed too, whereas I think The Last Kingdom's a little bit more natural lighting lit, if that makes sense, and a little bit more kind of mundane, if you will, more realistic, if anything.
mhm,
Whereas Vikings is much more
cinematic.
cinematic, darker, right? A
Okay.
lot of darker themes. There's even probably like, some sort of tint or lighting adjustment on everything. Um, and it definitely, because even the description here, like the series is inspired by the tales of Norsemen in early medieval
Ah,
Scandinavia.
okay.
So
Nice.
um yeah, so they definitely lean into the fantasy a little bit, to just where these characters are doing, they never do anything that's like magical, but
Right.
to the common Norsemen in these stories, these are larger than life characters, and
Nice.
they make that known.
So
So
Last Kingdom you can find on Netflix. It's a Netflix original, and all seasons are available to watch on Netflix. You said Vikings is a History Channel show?
yeah, you usually have to watch the latest season and episodes on
Hulu?
history.com, but you can catch everything on Hulu.
Oh,
At
nice.
least at least you're like one season behind, I think, on Hulu.
Is is Vikings still active, or has the series ended?
I believe it's still active. Uh,
I think the same for The Last Kingdom.
let's see here. Started in 2013. There's 6 seasons. It might be over, or it might be in some delay. No, it's still listed as active. It's just I think there's been a delay on the season.
Yeah. Yeah, same for Last Kingdom. There's currently 4 seasons, and it's still listed as ongoing. And the way the last season ended there, it definitely sets up for a 5th season. But I'm looking right now, and as of July, Netflix has not yet officially confirmed the release date for season 5.
Comic Con 2020, they
So
had a season 6 Vikings official clip.
nice.
So it
I
looks
love
like,
Vikings, so I highlighted that one as one that I need to check out.
yeah, it's cool. And each season evolves, and they make, for better or worse, each season evolves and is a little different than the last.
Nice, nice.
So there's highs and there's lows. But the first season or two are just so good.
Um, are there any other Viking shows? Of those were the only two that were on my list. I'm
Um,
not particularly aware of any other ones, but there definitely could be.
Of note is Norseman, also on Netflix.
You know
Um,
what? I think I've heard it. Isn't it like a comedy?
I think so. I don't know enough about it, but I do know that one exists. It's either a comedy or some sort of more realistic doc, which are two separate things. So I really don't know what its premise is. And then on
Um,
Prime, they had, I think in like 2014-ish, it was like called Real Vikings. And I think that was
like Real
mostly
Housewives,
no,
Viking edition.
no, it was like in response to the Hollywood dramatized Viking shows that were springing up at the time, such as Last
Ah,
Kingdom and Vikings.
right. The internet lists Norseman as a comedy, so
Yep,
then you can believe everything that you read on the internet.
yes, we do because of the internet.
Yep. But let's take a little detour in the episode because I know that this is right up your alley. It's something that you probably wanted to talk about, but I heard there's a new Assassin's Creed game coming out that actually is about Vikings.
Yeah. So new Assassin's Creed game, Valhalla, set in Norse mythology and land. Definitely, it's. I think I might play this one because I play about every other Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, I like how you're like, I think I'll play this one.
Because I played, okay, so I played the first Assassin's Creed, and then I played the second one and all its expansions because that was just a different era in gaming altogether. Late 2000s, and those games were so good. And then I tried three, and that's where I fell off. And then I was hit or
Okay.
miss. And then Origins, which is set in basically the Greek period of ancient Egypt, so good. Game's so good.
Did you play the pirate one? Black
No,
Flag?
no, I did not. Maybe it's worth going back and playing. That was definitely I skipped a bunch there in the middle because it got too messy and I was just too busy doing other things. But
Yeah.
Origin was like a very good encapsulation of all the things that they were working toward. So it was the next, like, to me, stage in that game's development. And then Odyssey, which is ancient Greece, to me, from what I have observed, is just Origins with more paywalls and loot boxes.
Oh, nice. It's
So
exactly what everyone wants from every game.
yeah, so I'm skipping that one. But I might pop in here for Valhalla. Now, I'm gonna plug a YouTube channel here, and it's called Shadiversity. And it's this dude he writes history books, kind of. I think that's what he does. He writes books. He's a writer. But he has this YouTube channel where he does deep dives into medieval architecture, medieval everything about medieval like life. And he did a watch of the trailer for Valhalla, and basically he was basically saying like, oh, leather armor. People did not wear leather armor. It just wasn't a thing. And he has like those kind of, to people who don't know actual historical details like that, it's kind of like a hot take. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, leather armor is a key armor in any game,
Right, right.
So I thought that was really interesting.
So is he just
um
kind of like dumping on the?
no, he's not dumping. He takes a very kind of like
Okay.
somber look at it, but there are those like triggering points for him. So leather armor was a triggering point,
Triggered.
because he was like, dude, they wore chainmail, like, it
Yeah.
works. Leather
Come on,
was like,
get it right, loser.
it was hard to come by, and you used it for so many other things that you were not making like leather vests out of it. um
Right.
but
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 what
he's
are the
like,
rogues supposed to wear?
exactly, that's what I was saying the whole time. I'm like, come on, man. But like, he's just like a super nerd, but like his videos are like really cool. Like, he did a complete 3D model rendering of Winterfell from Game of Thrones,
Oh, nice.
as so he took all the material and information about this castle from Game of Thrones, but then also fit it into what would be historically accurate from a castle like that, and built it in Google SketchUp. And it is insane how much stuff he knows about that stuff. But
Nice.
it was a cool video, and I mean, he just has a lot of cool things to say. But I just naturally, for whatever reason, I found that because I watched Valhalla, and then there's a video, of this dude just saying, "Let me dissect how accurate this is."
Nice. So I've never played an Assassin's Creed game,
Oh my gosh.
and to be quite honest, though Valhalla looks really cool, a lot of games look really cool to me, and I have like a desire to play them. But then, I mean, I turn on the computer
Yeah, we all know
and
what happens.
my mouse, it's like magnetically repelled away from Steam, and somehow always lands on League of Legends. And no matter how much I hate League of Legends,
Shame.
and how much stress and like
It's your
anger and
it's your
sadness,
crack addiction. You are addicted to that game.
dude,
Take the
I
needle
have
out, man.
I have not heard a more true statement. Like, so accurate.
You're stuck in whatever stage of
Yeah.
of denial.
So
You're
okay,
past now.
here's
You're in acceptance phase, but you're not leaving acceptance phase. You're
yeah,
just
no,
perpetually accepting your
I'm
addiction.
comfortable here, I guess.
I like this.
So I guess let's take another detour. So completely unrelated to anything this episode's about. When I think about why I am so addicted to League of Legends, um, like I grew up, in my childhood playing sports all the time. Like played baseball all the time. Whenever it wasn't snowing outside, I was trying to play baseball. Um, After high school, when obviously I didn't become a college athlete or a professional baseball player, I did the next natural thing, which was adult softball to get my like competitive juices out.
Is it adult male softball though?
Yeah, like slow pitch with all the like fat old people.
Men only.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
girls allowed. Um, so I did that for several years, and then we had kids, and then like, I mean, I'm
That's,
33, so I'm not like that
you and your
old.
softball team had kids.
Yeah, we had it was very awkward. Um, but no, so then like I got fatter than I had been, and like now I'm older, but I'm not like super old. So like people that actually know me are gonna be like, "Shut up, you're not that old." Um, but like, so I don't really have time to play softball anymore. Just with like work and kids and stuff and everything else that's going on in life. And when I do play, like I hurt afterwards because I'm old and out of shape. So all that being said, I still have the desire to like compete in things, but like, how do I do that? Well, it's freaking League of Legends. Like, I I don't know. There's just something about that game. I could do like an entire separate podcast that is only on League of Legends, which is very sad. But yeah, it's just that's the one thing that scratches that itch. So that's the cause. Like I accept my addiction and I even understand my addiction, but like I cannot beat it. So
No,
sad.
yeah. Tell us your story. I mean, we really want. No, I'm kidding. So
This
no,
actually isn't a podcast episode. This is just low key Nick's super secretive like intervention.
I slowly just talk our hosts, quote air quotes, out of their problems.
Yeah.
One day,
But
Mike will leave us, and he will go on to live a very fulfilling life, addiction free.
yeah, yeah, this is some like Truman effect, like rehab facility, actually.
But
Um,
But let me say something. Your league is similar to my Civ addiction. Um, and I'm not addicted to Civ like you are to League, but when it is 1 a.m. on a work night, and I'm just clicking like the next turn, and I could probably do that literally until my son wakes up at like 7 in the morning,
Yeah.
and my brain would hardly care that it's tired. Um, because I think it's the consistency. You basically know exactly what you're getting into
Yeah.
with these games. And there's not a question of like, what do I want to play? What do I feel like playing? Like, no. Let's just fix that for you and
Yeah.
play something.
I just need to win or lose. Like, I don't even need to play. Like,
Yeah.
But just one more comment on my crippling addiction. I'm a responsible addict. I'll let you know.
Functioning addict.
Yeah, I don't miss social events because of my addiction. I still go to bed at a reasonable hour. I eat and use the restroom while playing. You know.
You're
Um,
not Cartman?
no.
Mom!
Yeah.
Mom!
Hot pockets. But anyways, all that being said, like I keep seeing things about Valhalla and I'm like, that looks like such a fun game. I want to play it. But then I'm just like, but I'm not. Like let's just be honest with ourselves here, Mike. I don't know why there's more than one Mike, but let's just be honest with ourselves here. Like you'll buy it and then you'll never open it. Because as long as that big old L icon is sitting there on the desktop and I have internet access to like go back and re-download and install League of Legends if I were to uninstall it.
It's such a great completionist game, though, for completionists, because there's like definite things for you to check off and complete on the map, right? And
Yeah,
do.
so have you like really looked into Valhalla or outside of just watching like a trailer or like a little gameplay thing? Have you
No, I
actually
haven't. I've stayed away from it, and I typically I kind of do that for games a lot of times. Oddly enough, not sure why I do that for games.
I keep
Maybe I do that because I Assassin's Creed for me is predictable enough where at least game to game I can make a pretty good bet whether or not I'm going to regret it or not. So I
Yeah.
knew I would regret Odyssey because I would not have played it fully because I'm technically still working on Origins because there's that much shit to do.
Oh
And
yeah.
they still support the game.
I like stuff like
So
that.
yeah, and I even got Origin. No, I got Origins like semi early, but there's still like an expansion I just got that I haven't finished yet, and then there's another one after that.
Mm,
So to me, Origins has probably another in my life events probably has another like 4 years of playtime
dang.
on the table. So I might pick up Valhalla if it's ever like super cheap and on sale. So
Nice. I keep seeing things about like a village system in Valhalla where kind of like Viking Farmville in Assassin's Creed or something. Like
let me.
I haven't like really looked into it, so I could be totally misrepresenting what this
So I lied.
function is.
I did get Google did tell me to read this article and I read it. So basically, Valhalla will take a step back to something that they started to do in like Assassin's Creed 2, and that's kind of like build up towns and cities and like upgrade buildings. It's pretty rudimentary back in like AC2, which I think was like 2010. Um, so from what I understand, it's going to be what they tried to do then in Assassin's Creed 3, and it failed really bad, and they just stopped. So I think it's going to have like a Fallout esque,
Hmm.
you know, build up a town, build up your village kind of thing
Nice.
to it. So that seems exciting, and if it's like done right, I would really enjoy that because I liked it in Fallout. But Fallout kind of missed Fallout 4 missed a few key mechanics to me. And how they're like, what are they called in Fallout 4? Like settlements, yeah.
Mhm.
Um, that just didn't really hit home. It kind of like left that mechanic kind of shallow, and I kind of was upset at it.
Yeah. Well, that sounds cool.
You know how else you can get into Assassin's Creed?
How?
Netflix just announced they're going to do a live action Assassin's Creed series.
Oh snap! Fastbender coming back?
Probably not, but there's literally no information about it. I think they just like tweeted um, something very ominous, but it was very clear Assassin's Creed plus Netflix.
Kind of sounds like my Resident Evil series update from a handful of episodes ago. I know nothing but this.
It's happening.
Yeah. So, uh, do you have any other games that kind of fall into this period piece topic that you would like to talk about while we're on the topic of games? I mean, I guess you could
No, we got
consider Civ as a maybe. I mean, like you play through history, right?
yeah. So I mean, yeah, yeah. We have to talk enough about games so I can add this to our What's Playing playlist. If you ever want to peep episodes where we talk a decent bit about gaming, please visit our What's Playing playlist on YouTube.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so
Subscribe.
subscribe. I was thinking about it, and that's tricky
Yeah.
because Civ goes through these different eras. You're researching technology. I think it's a very macro period piece, if you will.
Yeah.
So I enjoy early game civilization because what you're doing is you are founding new cities, you're building roads, you're marching very primitive armies and sieging other people's cities. So in that aspect, you are kind of experiencing a period of civilization. So at a macro level, yeah, I think it could be a period piece.
Yeah, I kind of struggled with the same thought process in naming some of the shows that I've watched and want to watch about like cuz I mean, if we're just talking about things that take place in like a a past time period, like that's a lot of shows and movies, right?
Yeah.
But we'll get to that later when we go. Like, I don't know if you have like a list of shows, but I have like a huge list of shows that we can kind of like touch on. We don't have to spend a ton of time on. But I would say, as far as games go, um, like New World is very exciting for me, and we don't have to talk at all about New World because we have actually an entire episode talking about New World. And it's not actually out yet, so there's not much to update on from our last episode. But that game gives off strong period piece vibes, and I think that's one of the main reasons why I enjoyed our little preview playtime, uh, months ago. And I guess that's kind of why I'm looking forward to it so much. Hopefully it releases the in this scheduled release date. But yeah, I think that might be one of the only games that might be able to pull the needle out of my arm, actually.
Well, I mean that's an interesting concept, New World, and really kind of adds to that list as you said about what is a period piece. So I'm gonna correlate New World as kind of like a fantasy fiction period piece,
Hmm.
because it's set in like the 1700s, but there is people of that time went to this place, this new world, which is very magical and um, fantasy like. So strong period piece elements, but with a very heavy dose of fantasy. What also does that on the show front would be that net or the Amazon Prime with Orlando
Yes,
Bloom.
I'm so glad that you made that correlation because literally the clickety clacketing that you probably heard as Nick was talking was me literally adding Carnival Row to my list.
Yes, sir. Yeah, Carnival Row. And to me, that's a period piece.
Yeah, same.
Completely not in a real period of time, but somehow it is a fantasy period piece set in
Yeah.
this steampunkish 1800 world.
Yeah, I think if you like, well, like even when I read the definition, which I have since changed that browser's contents, so I can't reread it very quickly. But like it doesn't really say anything about like actually being historic in nature, you know? It's just that it takes place in a period of time that is somewhat in the past and then is reflected that way via like set and costume design and things like that. So I I think in the example of Carnival Row, the fact that it's completely fantasy but appears to take place in like a past time, you know?
Yeah,
Like
1850 for sure.
totally would count as a period piece in my book.
Yeah,
And if you've never seen Carnival Row, it's on Prime and it is super good.
super good. And I mean, I think to me, so while that period piece criteria is just immense, right, and broad, I think what refines it for me is when they spend that time to world build and there's things that focus on that world building. To me, that is what separates the good ones from the bad ones, and ultimately what I care about when it comes to these things.
Yeah, so just looking at my list here, I have two on my list that I actually kind of debated on whether or not I should include or not, but I think they fall into that category that you're just talking about right there, where they like really lean into the period part of the piece, you know, like the world building and the props and the sets and the costume design and all that stuff. One would be Mindhunter on Netflix, which we've kind of briefly talked about in other episodes. Um, but I mean, like, I feel like it nails the 70s, you know, even though it's more of like a crime drama type deal. Like, I think it has elements of period piece stuff in it. Don't you think?
No, yeah, for sure, and we touched on that in I think in our top 3 episode.
Yeah, I think that
because
was the one.
because naturally we all had some strong period piece references in there. And
Yep.
like I said, Narcos is an excellent period piece example where they just nail the 80s and the world of drug traffickers.
Man, you know what, dude? You're just like nailing all my transitions for me. This is amazing.
You're
Because the
welcome.
other show that I had is Stranger Things.
Mm, yeah, 80s, heavy 80s. They either capitalize on some deep YouTube um like 80s synthwave or they started it. I don't know which happened first.
No, they synthwave and vaporwave has been going on for quite some time, but I think they just like brought it into the mainstream.
Yeah, well not that they invented those, but yeah, that definitely made the 80s like tempos return.
Yeah,
Cuz now you find that in like popular music right now.
yeah. That is the like literally the reason of me discovering vaporwave and synthwave and chillwave and all that stuff. Literally was listening to the Stranger Things soundtrack from, you know, the first season and then just letting the YouTube take me down the rabbit hole, you know, and then all of a sudden I'm in like some like super obscure like vaporwave artist playlist or whatever. Um but like yeah, even though Stranger Things is like a horror show, it's very much a period piece in my mind because it's like literally oozing 80s out of your TV speakers, you know.
Right. And and I mean that's the whole thing to like say about like music, especially music and shows and games. I mean that obviously brings people strongly to a certain period. So what really puts you in that 80s period for Stranger Things is a lot of the music. Obviously how they
Yeah.
dress and all that stuff, the cars, blah blah blah. But the music does a lot of it. Um,
Yeah, it's totally an underrated and often overlooked aspect to film. Um, like as a musician myself, I pay attention a lot to you know the composition of the score and like
mm,
when
you're setting up.
certain sounds and musics like are happening in the scenes and like how they're used for transitions and like how they're used to elicit certain feelings and add tension and create relief. And so like that's a huge thing I love to pay attention to. And when a creator is able to nail that aspect of the small details, it just like elevates the show or movie or series, whatever it is, to like a whole new level.
Well, thank you for setting up a transition period for one of my points. Um,
Yeet.
so this is a larger theme that we could cover, but it might be a little too big for this episode. But a very good period piece movie would be Troy. I think most people have seen Troy. Brad Pitt, Orlando Bloom, a bunch of other people. But specifically to the score of that movie. So there was the theatrical release, which had an amazing score to it, right? Um, all the fights, particularly like the fight where Hector uh, duels Achilles, incredible. But me being a super nerd of that movie, I have like some Blu-ray deluxe edition of it. There is a version of the movie with a completely different score to
Hmm,
it. And when you watch it with the different score, it is the same movie, but it is much different just
that's
with the
pretty
score
cool.
alone. Because like you're watching these scenes and you're listening to this different score, and it's a different experience, very
Yeah.
much so.
Music is such a powerful tool to make you feel certain things that
Right,
it makes me sad when even the creators themselves like overlook that tool that they have in their belt.
right.
Um, but man, holy cow. Could you imagine those transitions? So good. We don't talk about anything that we talk about on the podcast when we record prior to recording. So, man, that's
It's a,
chemistry, bro.
just the natural flow of things.
That's right. Um, awkward transition. No. Yeah. So, do you do you have lists of shows that you wanted to talk about or anything?
Um, yeah, I do have a list of shows. Actually two lists at this point.
Okay.
We covered my first list, which was the Viking and Assassin's Creed topics,
Okay.
which we pretty thoroughly covered. Though I do want to add a few things with the Assassin's Creed, um, and another reason why you should play it, because it in itself is a great period piece game because they spend so much time detailing the period it's set in. And Assassin's Creed Origins specifically, that's set in the Greek period of Egypt, which is like the Ptolemy period. Um, it has a playthrough of that game where it's history only, because some like museums and actual Egypt historians verified how accurate that game is to the actual setting that it's placed in, to like the layout of the cities, to the way things look, to what people are wearing. So it's kind of like a museum by
Oh,
itself, that
that
game.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's like certified like historical accurate within like certain degrees. So I I hope I don't think Valhalla is going to be like that, unfortunately. But they spent a lot of time on Origins because it was like it was setting up the next tier of the whole Assassin's Creed ethos,
Nice.
almost like a reset. But um, I think Nightfall. I think I mentioned that
That's
before.
on my list.
Good.
Yes. So you'll be disappointed to know that I've only seen the first season.
That's fine. I mean, to me, you should watch second season because Mark Hamill shows up and he's just badass.
Yeah, Mark Hamill, my
Um,
guy.
but that's like a nice casual watch. I wouldn't say you're missing anything if you're not finishing the series, but it's worth watching if that makes any sense.
It does. I really enjoyed the first season. It just got buried in the backlog.
Right. I would never say like, hey, you have to watch that amongst your list without seeing your list because I know there's probably better stuff on your list that you should need to watch. But definitely keep it there. And if it ever
Okay.
if it ever pops up, keep working through that.
So maybe uh, it might be a good idea as we go through our list and the remaining shows on our list if we give like a short synopsis of the show. Like we don't have to like go in hard and like do a deep dive on the show, but maybe just for the listeners, um, because I know that you and I obviously talk about this stuff all the time outside the podcast. So like shows that I might not have particularly seen yet that you might bring up, or vice versa. Like we've heard each other tell each other about them, so we have like a general idea of what they're about. But yeah, let's you know give our listeners a little heads up, and hopefully they'll go
Dude,
check it out and watch it themselves.
they got Google. They can do it themselves.
True. We got 2 hours to hit though.
We're gonna hit it.
um, but yeah, so Nightfall is on Netflix. That's another history show channel, right?
Yes, sir. It's an original history.
Okay, okay, nice, nice. I have a show on my list from a super random channel that you would never expect a show to come from, and is actually really good. Um, but yeah, so the story of Nightfall, we're just following the Templar Knights and their pursuit of the Holy Grail that was lost in an attack on a city. Correct? I believe I'm remembering the first season correctly.
Yeah, they the first season really kind of starts with a flashback in hindsight that is the Templars in one of the last crusades, and they lose the city of Jerusalem, and then it's like flash forward 20 years, they're kind of just became these very wealthy banker warriors because they're just filthy rich, and that's just kind of what they do. They lend people money, and I think they were like one of the first big banking organizations, which lends itself to the whole um not conspiracy, it might be conspiracy theory, but like the idea that the Knights Templar has evolved to like kind of like the New World Order. They pull the strings, they control the money, but that's like a whole different topic altogether. um
Yeah.
but yeah, it follows this particular Templar who he's made some bad decisions. He makes bad decisions. He's not the most model version of a Templar,
Not the
but
most Templar of knights.
no, but to me that character is very realistic because he isn't by the book, by the rules, a model Templar, but his intentions are incredibly good to the point where he is more Christ-like than a by the book Templar might be,
Right.
and less corrupt when it comes to like the core that he is.
Right. Right.
So they do a good job, I think, at digging into rituals and different practices that they lived by, all while kind of like doing the glorified combat and the crazy kind of drama interweaved into there.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the combat scenes in Nightfall, and particularly back to the Last Kingdom. Just like the battles are so cool, and they're so interesting because, um, more particularly in the Last Kingdom, just because like that whole show is about just like a giant war. So there's a lot of battles and stuff. Just the way that their battles took place is just like mind blowing. Like they literally just like stand with their shields right across the field from each other. Like they meet in a field and they're like standing a football field away from each other, just staring at each other. And then they're just like, all right, we're doing this. And then they just kind of like run into each other. And then a bunch of people die. Or like the shield walls and like some of the tactics that they do and like the pincer moves where like they secretly had like 15 guys hide in the woods, so they're just trying to get the other army to like charge them so the people can go behind them and like entrap them. It's just like such a stark difference from modern day combat or like modern day movies where you're just seeing gun battles and stuff.
Hey, if you're interested in combat period pieces, you should just play Total War, probably any of those, because it has all that in it.
True.
But no, I mean, I think the same thing. I think especially when I watch medieval and Viking stuff, because that was at a coming out of the Dark Ages or in the Dark Ages where the greatness of Rome had fallen and the days of tens of thousands of men lined up in very organized equipped armies and marching, right? Think Roman, think
Right.
Greek kind of wars. That had all dissipated, and we're talking bands and militias of you know 50 guys that happen to have some shields and some swords, and we're gonna
Yeah.
be like, hey, fuck those guys, and we're gonna go over there and we're gonna go rough them up. And
Yeah, let's
they
get
have
them.
and they happen to show up at the field at the same time, and they're like, all right, we're doing this like you said. And
Yeah.
it's a mess. It's not
Yeah.
organized, and then you can try to be organized, but
I mean, how organized can you be with just like staring at basically certain death, like knowing that like, well, any minute now we're just gonna kind of run at each other until
it's just
either someone runs away or everyone's gone.
yeah, it's so weird because like that is glorified in these period pieces, but that would be so heavily criticized today if, you know, some popular dude in your town was just like he was just talking that shit, and all everyone in town was like, yeah, this guy, whatever he does, that's what we're doing. So
Yeah.
if he's like, yeah, the next town over, fuck those guys, we are gonna go mess them up, and everyone's just like, yeah, I know you. You're my neighbor, but I'm shooting your ass, or I'm gonna, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just crazy how people's social structures work then for
Yeah.
that event to occur.
Yeah. It is pretty crazy. Um, I just started a show last night called Barbarians, which I had heard of before you happened to mention it. But you like reminded me of it. It's a Netflix show. I only watched one episode last night, so I don't
So
have
happy you
like
mentioned this.
yeah, I don't have like a great synopsis of it, but basically from what I gathered, also it's a foreign show, so I can't read and so I have to have the English sub like dubbed, you know? It's
Barbarian.
not
Wait, Barbarians on Netflix
yes.
is has it's subbed or
Yes, I believe so. I
oh
believe
wow.
it's like I want to say it's a German show, but I could be
Oh,
incorrect.
wait a
Um
second. Okay, wait. Pause. So this is on my list, and I have some things to say about it, but I'm very intrigued by what you're saying. So, did you get the vibe that it is a foreign show and therefore they are speaking the language of that modern day country? Or I do know it is set in ancient Germany. So, are they going that hard on the period piece that they are speaking the literal language of the time?
I have no clue because I was
Man,
with the English dubs, so um but yeah,
hmm,
it's a German show. And they so basically
appropriate.
what happened in the first episode, I'm not gonna give away giant, spoiler alerts, but
Spoiler.
basically it sets up the thing where there's separate tribes of like nomadic villages that aren't really allies, but they have like a peace treaty among them, so they're like living with each other kind of deal, tolerating each other. But also like Rome is a thing, and they did have a deal with Rome where they just kind of got left alone and allowed to live their lives the way that they normally do. But a new leader of Rome took power, so the Roman, representatives and a small Roman army comes to one of the tribes and is like, "Hey, we need tribute, and it's like this much now." And they kind of get mad, and they're like, "Yo, what the heck? We had this like deal. Like, we can't give you all that because we don't even have that." And so it appears to be like a conflict of these barbarians, these nomadic tribes banding together to combat the Roman Empire. But it has promise. I think the first episode is pretty good. It looks nice, like visually. It's a nice looking show. Um, and if you're like me and you can't read, the English dub's not that bad. It wasn't super distracting, so um, yeah, I'll probably finish it.
No, I mean I definitely have them on my list to watch. I know some people that have watched it, and they do have some criticisms of it. Uh, but this is coming from kind of a group of people that, like me, might be a little too critical on these things, because uh, what this is going to be for me is like another attempt at the need for a good Roman period piece,
Mm,
because the Roman period pieces, surprisingly, while not having seen many of them, but just based on how many of them came out, that was kind of like a thing in the 50s and 60s was Roman time movies. And
yeah,
there's a ton of them that are apparently very good and very well thought of, that just don't happen anymore. And if there is any kind of Roman time period covered, it isn't directly about the Romans. It's either about the barbarians, England, Spartacus, particularly, just covered kind of like the gladiators and the slaves. So
hmm
the Romans are always kind of like the bad guys, more or
yeah.
less.
This is another
Um,
one of those.
yeah, exactly, and that's it makes me sad, and because I really like Roman
It would be really
things.
cool to get a story from the other perspective, right? From the other side of the phone, so to speak, where the Romans are portrayed as the the normal people, right? And somebody else is the villain.
Yeah, I mean, I think they fall victim to being one of the largest and most successful empires ever. And I mean, the United States might fall into this role in like 100 years, and we're just going to be demonized for the greatness
Going
we
to?
were. Yeah, for the greatness that it is.
Yeah.
Because Rome, I think Rome was just it hit all the bases. It was everywhere. They were bound to be the bad guys to somebody. I mean, they crucified Christ. So right there, they have a big knock against them across the
Yeah,
board.
I mean, you could say that. Yeah, that's, hey, if you're gonna like kill the son of God, I mean, that might be, maybe going a little
Even
overboard.
yeah, yeah, right. So I think there's just like a lot of modern day ways of thinking that just kind of easily paint them in kind of the role similar to the Nazis, where they are just kind of the background bad guys of the time, and everyone
Yeah.
wants to tell the story of the underdog during that period.
Yeah. So when I when I started talking about barbarians, let's get back to that one question that you asked about the language. Why don't you like expand upon that? Because I think that's a very interesting um, question.
So whether or not it's native or if they just went that deep into the period piece.
Yeah, like, so you're asking if, like, so it's a German show from what I can tell. You're asking, are they just speaking German? Are they like speaking the language of, you know,
Yeah, so I mean,
1692 or whatever year this took place in?
it's cool that it's a German show because they happen to be in Germany. So I would say like Narcos, where they put a strong emphasis on the speak Spanish when they are Spanish speaking people,
Hmm.
or Portuguese, whatever you might be, because they do cover some of that too. They make it a point in the show to show that language barrier. So, I mean, I think if that were the case, the Germans would be the barbarians would be speaking German, and the Romans would be speaking like Latin. So they might not be going for that, and it might just simply be
Yeah. So they do, the Romans do call the barbarians like Germanians. So there you go, confirming that again. I just
yeah,
kind of recalled that. But one thing that's interesting watching it with the English dubs is, so the Romans obviously speak a different language than the barbarians, but yeah, as I'm watching it, the barbarians are speaking English, and then when the Romans speak not the language that the barbarians are speaking, they're speaking like it's subtitled,
yeah,
and like not in English. So it's like this weird like Inception type layering where I'm like, oh, this is so weird.
no, I love that. I mean, it's a hard thing to do, and it's not necessary, but I like it when shows do that, and I love Narcos for that reason. Is
Yeah.
because they just like music or whatever an important detail is. The fact that they get the languages straight is really it really sets you in that place. So I might watch it completely. I might watch it dubbed because that might make me want to watch it dubbed if the barbarians are speaking English, but they sub the
Yeah,
Romans
they
still. That's
subtitle
cool.
the Romans when they
That's
speak. Yeah.
yeah. So they're making it a point to say these people are speaking different
Yeah.
languages, and
Yeah,
that's
for sure.
important. It sucks
Um,
when everyone just speaks English.
right. Yeah, it's just another one of those small details that, you know, shows that the creators are putting an emphasis on everything.
Yeah. And I have a prediction, not knowing too much about this show, but it might be an anthology.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, because if they just named it barbarians, there were lots of different barbarian groups against the Romans.
Hmm. That would
Um,
definitely be interesting.
yeah, from
I don't know anything about this show other than what I saw in the first episode.
yeah,
So I can't say either way, but that would definitely be interesting because another thing that we love, aside from
mhm.
period pieces, are anthologies.
An anthology period piece. Sign
Oh my
us up.
gosh. Yep. Um, but yeah, so I'm interested to see where this show goes. Like I said, it's on Netflix and it just came out in 2020, so there's only one season. Um, another
So now I'm
show.
gonna go watch that instead of the boys. Good job.
Oh, no, what have I done? Um, yeah, so do you mind if I just rattle off some other shows on my list, or do you have anything from your list that you'd like to?
Um, do you have any more Roman ones
Roman ones.
in that time period?
No, there is a show on what I want to watch, but haven't yet, called La Revolution, which came out this year. I looked last night. There is a season on Netflix. But again, this is another show I know absolutely nothing about. I saw a trailer, and I don't even think I saw the trailer with audio. I just like watched the trailer silently. But it's a French show, so even if I did have the audio, I wouldn't understand, and I don't know how to read. So, um, but it's, I mean, not exactly during that same time period, but it's like somewhat, you know, close in vibe, I think, to like Barbarians, but obviously French Revolution. Um, yeah, aside from that, all the other ones kind of go in different directions, but I think I showed you or linked you the trailer to this show the other day. Do you recall it at all, or have you heard of this show?
Which one?
La Revolution?
No, I've seen it. I've seen. It's not Netflix, is it? Or is
Yeah,
it?
yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
I've seen. I actually think I have it on. my watch list.
Oh, speaking of, I created a new profile on Netflix for those of you that listened last week.
Big.
So, yeah, I told Becca she's not allowed to use it, and yeah, so I'm gonna start like adding all of these shows that we're talking about to my list and give
Dude,
them thumbs up.
get it.
See what the algo does. But yeah, this show looks very uh like visually pleasing and like cinematic, and it just it has that feel from the visuals that like this is probably like barring anything crazy, like I don't see how this show could be bad.
Yeah, and that's another factor that's important for me for period pieces is I like them to be accurate, but I also don't want them to be a documentary. So I want them to have that Hollywood glaze on them, but while
Yeah,
being accurate too. I hate to say, that's kind of like
gotta
having
have
your
the
kid.
shinies.
Yeah, I want it to look good. I want it to look good, but I want it to also be somewhat accurate.
Yeah,
And sometimes I feel like that's a hard thing for people to strike,
yeah,
but maybe they manage to do it sometimes, especially in movies. But there's always those people that make YouTube videos, yikes, that are like, oh, this is completely wrong, inaccurate,
yeah, yeah.
boo.
Do you have another one that's Roman-esque?
I'm gonna put this one out because it's kind of recent news, and it ties into my love for Assassin's Creed Origins. So the same period that game is set in, which is also the Cleopatra time period, and she's actually in the game. Gal Gadot, I think.
Oh, old Wonder Woman.
Yeah, Wonder Woman has been cast to play Cleopatra in an upcoming movie.
I
Um,
think I had seen something about outrage over
pe-
that.
People were upset that it was some Hollywood whitewashing, but then people countered and were like, "Well, no, dummies, she's Israeli and is
Yeah,
that's more accurate than not." But then they were like, you should have someone from like Egypt." But then they're like, "Well, Cleopatra was like part Greek too." So that's just like a really stupid argument.
also like
I think some people jumped the gun, and then now everyone's just too far down the rabbit hole on
yeah,
that, where
to
it's
let
just it's
go.
just
Yeah,
stupid. Yeah.
but it's like at what point, like, I mean, it's acting, right? You're pretending to be somebody you're not. Not to go
Right.
down a whole other rabbit trail.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, she doesn't really look like a white person, you know? Like for as not to I don't want to go down this rabbit hole. But
Well,
I'll say one last thing. Like if you're gonna say like, that movie is whitewashed, like I mean, she doesn't look like she is like 100% Caucasian, you know?
yeah, she's not 100% American Hollywood.
Right. Like
Um,
there are plenty other people where if they were cast as Cleopatra, I'd be like, okay, I kind of see your point. But like her,
well, you know, because that rabbit hole has gone so deep to where there was an article where it was like technically, archaeologically speaking, she resembles Cleopatra a lot. So
yeah,
there's that aspect of it. Like
yeah,
when you're talking about like lining up people who look like people,
right,
if she happens to look and have features and fit the role, because Cleopatra for her time was supposed to be, if they're going for like a more legend type thing, or like the myth of Cleopatra, she's the most beautiful woman at the time. So it would be very fitting to have a very beautiful woman to play her of modern times. So I
right.
think people just lost they just tried too hard to jump on something,
Right.
and it's just a mess. But yeah, that's coming out.
So is that a
Um,
movie or a show?
it's a movie.
Okay, I was gonna say I would be surprised if Gal was in a show.
Yeah, I would agree.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I guess, and then like staying on a somewhat similar path and just moving our way east. um, Marco Polo is a show that is on my I haven't watched, but well, I mean, I guess technically I've seen a handful of episodes, but for whatever reason stopped. But I remember it being somewhat of an interesting show. So I hope maybe someday to go back to it. But that did you ever watch Marco Polo, or do you have any idea what I'm talking about?
I watched the first 3 episodes when it first came out. It didn't stick, and it wasn't exactly what I was expecting. So it never like I never finished it. It's still on my watch list, like way deep on the Netflix watch list.
Right.
Um, but I don't know if I'll ever get to it. And plus, I think it was canceled like at 2 or season
Yeah, it
3.
didn't have very many seasons. But that's pretty much what happened with mine. But maybe someday I'll return to it. Um, yeah, that now my shows start to kind of like get a little more as modern as you can be for a period piece. But before I rattle off some other shows, did you have any that were somewhat related to what we were talking about?
Uh, no. I think that about like kind of covers that zone.
All right. So at the start, I kind of mentioned about my fascination with the fur trading era.
Yes.
So there's a handful of shows there. I'll start with probably my I don't want to say least favorite, but I guess technically it would be my least favorite. But I still actually really enjoyed it a ton. Um, it's called Taboo, and it's on Hulu. I believe it was an FX show. It's only one season, which is kind of sad. But it stars Tom Hardy, and um,
Yes, I wanted to watch that.
is it
Completely forgot about it.
it's good. It's really good, and it's kind of like his character's so out there. Um, but I really enjoy Tom Hardy, and this was a really good Tom Hardy character, if that makes sense. Um, but it kind of involves, I don't know if it necessarily exactly involves fur trading, but it involves, his dad owned a ship trading like a legitimate ship for a trading company. Uh, and he I think was in like the British Army or English Army or whatever, Tom Hardy's character, and like he did some heinous thing in like Africa at some trading post, and it's like a lot of drama, and he like comes back to the town where his dad lived because his dad died, and like he like tries to r- assume the trading company and et cetera, et cetera. But it's like super interesting story, and just they nail the world, which I know you'll really appreciate.
So important. Yeah, I completely forgot about that. Maybe I think I have a growing list of Hulu things I need to watch.
I'm telling you, man, Hulu is like low key pretty awesome. I used to not like Hulu at all, um, but
Two things.
honestly, FX kind of puts out a ton of really good shows recently, and FX is on Hulu a lot. So a lot of the stuff are shows from FX that I've enjoyed. But like they have AMC shows, they have
I,
Stars, I think.
the thing that doesn't help Hulu for me is they did an update like last year or something, and their UI is just ass
Yeah,
in my
not
mind.
good.
It's not good. It's probably the worst. It's like overdone and it's bad, and that doesn't help.
No.
And then I think somewhere in their original branding and how their algorithm works, it just recommends like crap.
Yeah.
And maybe I need to make a new profile and just like a bunch of the stuff I want to watch so it actually gives me stuff.
Yeah, one thing that I've done is like I don't I think I found Taboo honestly from a recommendation from the algorithm, but like you can browse like TV channels and
Mhm.
like shows and
Oh,
movies
okay.
from
Yeah, yeah.
the TV channels. Like like FX has a section, and then like FXX has a section because there's like 15 variations of FX. But like Fox and like CBS and NBC, like they all have their little categories, and you can like peruse the shows and movies and stuff that are uploaded on Hulu from those channels. Um, but yeah, the algorithm, you're right, and the UI is not great. But if you can like sift through different categories and stuff, you can find some really good stuff on there.
Yeah. Like, yeah, when Handmaid's Tale comes on back online,
That is always your like,
I gotta
oh,
have
Hulu time, Handmaid's Tale's back.
yeah, I gotta have a solid reason to show back up in there. And
All right, well, hey, let me give you a few more because a lot of my list are Hulu shows. So we've talked about The Terror a lot, which you need to finish. I feel like a broken record.
I feel like I don't watch any shows.
Yeah, I feel like maybe I picked a bad person to do this podcast with.
Feelings mutual.
All right, well, thank you for listening to Show Boys. Apparently, no.
And this is our final, so thank you. Goodbye.
Yep, but still sub. Yeah, so I'll rattle off some Hulu shows. 11/22/63, Hulu original, is interesting. I guess you could call it a period piece, but it also involves time travel and the JFK assassination. So super interesting. A lot of time is spent, obviously, in the years leading up to the assassination of JFK. Very interesting. James Franco's in it. It's pretty good. One season. That's all it is. It's like a little mini series. Good show. Hulu. You should watch it. The Terror we talked about before. Season 1 is amazing. Season 2, not so much. Anthology type series. The first season, we follow an Arctic expedition of the British Navy trying to find, I forget exactly what pass, but a passageway through the Arctic for a trade route to Asia, I believe, and a bunch of craziness ensues. Season 2 is set during World War II. You follow a Japanese family as they're in an internment camp, and spooky Japanese like demon spirit thing haunts the main character. Kind of an interesting story, but nowhere near as strong as the first season. Another Hulu original that I guess you could loosely consider a period piece is called Reprisal, and it's one season so far. But it kind of gives off a very like 50s ish hot rod vibe. I don't know if that makes any sense, but kind of like
American
maybe like
Graffiti.
a Grease vibe, you know?
Yeah. American
Um,
Graffiti would be a good reference.
you follow a woman in her quest for revenge against her brother, and basically her brother is the leader of some gang that what are they called? I can't recall what they're called off the top of my head, but they all drive like really cool old school like 50s type cars, and they dress in like your leather jacket and your like white shirt with like a cigarette pack rolled up in the sleeve. They never really like say when the show is set, and like they just kind of like don't talk about it, so like I don't know when it's set, but it's got a really cool aesthetic and vibe to it. But basically this hot rod gang is like at war with a motorcycle gang. It's really interesting. Only one
That sounds
season.
cool. I mean, that sounds
Yeah,
unique.
it's very interesting to say the least. And then I have two more from Hulu, but I'll just talk about one for now and give you a chance to kind of respond to everything I've just vomited on you. But the show that I was talking about that comes from a very unsuspecting channel is called Barkskins. It's on Hulu, and it actually is a show from the National Geographic Channel.
Mm.
Sounds really weird because Barkskins is like a legit drama and like doesn't look like your typical National Geographic or like History Channel type dramatization of a story or something. Um, it's really good and really interesting. Apparently, it's based off a book, but it takes place during the fur trading times. You kind of uh, it's set in a French village, and you follow a couple of French characters and then a character from the Hudson's Bay Company who's like investigating a murder or a missing person from the Hudson's Bay Company. And then obviously you have your um, Native American tribes in the area that are like, you know, fighting and killing the French people and the Hudson's Bay people and stuff. It's very interesting. One season, I don't know if there are any plans for a second season or anything, but it's super interesting and fits right in that like fur trading era. But
That's a strong affinity you have for that time period. There's something about the American wilderness you like then?
yeah, I don't really know. I mean, I think it's like old enough to be really fascinating, but like also like somewhat kind of
America.
recent, like in terms of like history on a grand scale, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and just the whole like I guess back to the undeveloped, things I was talking about where like they're pioneering a new land to them, a lot of discovery and stuff like that. But
Like New World.
like exactly like New World. Um, but yeah, like are, are you into the fur trading?
So
That was a really weird question.
are you are you into fur trade? Yeah, I really want to start trading furs.
Yeah.
I think it's looked down upon these days. Um, no, so basically, I'm always stuck in Roman times, Greek times, kind of that pre pre medieval times, like up to medieval times and into medieval times. So I think I have like a growing list of shows that I do want to watch that are kind of 16, 17, 1800s based. So obviously the fur trading shows, I want to watch some of those. That La Revolution one you mentioned. One I have on Netflix is called Turn, Washington Spies. I'm pretty sure it's a series. I don't think it's like a dramatized documentary, but like that period of like American Revolution and the New World, things like that, I do want to get into, but I think I'm so caught up in this other time period that I'm saving that for some point where I just kind of dive into it.
Right. So what did you say that was called? Turn?
Turn.
Interesting. I'll add that to my list.
Yeah,
Um,
Turn Washington Spies. Wow. First episode 2014. AMC is the network.
oh, AMC has a lot of good shows. I enjoy
Yeah.
AMC shows. Um, The Terror is an AMC show.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But yeah, like I guess your Roman time is my fur trading time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that medieval and then like stepping back into Greek times, and that's why that anime you recommended the other day.
Oh yeah, has that come
The
out
blood
yet?
of the blood of Zeus. Yeah, it came out on Tuesday, and my Netflix has just been harassing me to watch it.
Nice. I'll have to give it a shot because I remember wanting to give it a shot. Yeah,
Yeah,
man. If you keep putting off stuff, you know, waiting, just another Roman or medieval or Greek show is gonna come out, and you're just never gonna venture into these new lands.
yeah, it's hard. Um, yeah, and then but the other thing about those is like there's always like much better movies when it comes to Roman times, which is
Yeah,
nice. But a good series is just so much better, especially these days with the
yeah,
budgets and how they go about them.
and rip movie theaters for now.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Have you ever watched Frontier on Netflix? Speaking of
that
fur trading,
that's the one that I did start. Is that the one with Aquaman?
yes, our good
Yep.
friend Jason Momoa.
Yeah, I hope he's on the show sometime. But
Yeah, hey, maybe someday. If you're listening, Jason, we'd love to have you on.
yeah. But no, yeah, that's the one I started watching, and I think I got like 2 or 3 episodes in. I think I tried to watch it with Aaron, and it just didn't like click
Mm.
as a couple watch. So
Yeah, it's got some pretty brutal parts in it for
it's not
sure.
even that. I think it was too far like down the, she just rather be on her phone.
Right. Yeah, it's a little too far into the old niche there. Um yeah, that's I mean, I'm sure Frontier is probably one of the more popular shows probably on our lists tonight, I would think.
Is that still airing?
Yes, I believe so. But I could also be wrong, so let me Google it.
Jason's just low key doing a show for like 10
Yeah,
seasons.
he's like, I'm definitely not coming on now. Um, no, it's only 3 seasons.
Okay, that's doable. Could finish that.
But it also says November 2016 to present. So,
Oh. Yep.
oh, I keep every time I say something, I find something that contradicts what I just said. I see a headline here, which I
You'd
have
be a
no
great
idea
reporter.
exactly. I can't validate this at the moment, but the headline at least says Netflix canceled Frontier season 4. Um,
Must
there
be
are
true.
no official announcements regarding the upcoming season. The production team is remaining reserved and modest. Netflix has planned to cancel the next series, which I'm assuming they meant season of Frontier.
This
Uh,
goes into to support Cody's theory that Netflix just cancels things after 3 seasons.
yeah, but I can't trust this because they can't even type their words
Uh,
correctly.
that
Um,
sucks when you find those.
yeah, so who knows? Maybe it's done, maybe it's not. But the 3 seasons that are on Netflix are actually really good, so you should watch them if you haven't already.
All right.
That
The
one's an
boys
interesting,
keeps falling.
yeah. Um, it's pretty interesting show though because uh, instead of instead of following your like colonizers, I guess this one Jason plays. We're on a first name basis now, by the way. My good friend Jason, he plays a character called Declan Harp, and he's half Irish and half Cree. So he's like, half native and half colonizer, I guess is the best word I can think of.
See,
Um,
it's already happening. We're telling the stories of not the colonizing Americans or Europeans. We're
yeah,
telling
so
some story of some fur trader. It begins.
yeah, it's really interesting because it definitely paints the Hudson's Bay Company and the colonizers in a bad light, obviously, um, as they're coming over here and taking basically ripping the fur trade along with the land from the natives.
Right.
So it's very interesting. It has a lot of really cool like fight scenes and stuff, and so at some points it's pretty brutal, but it's a very interesting story. Nonetheless, you should definitely finish it. And it, for those of you that haven't seen it at all, you should check it out.
I'll have to restart it
Yeah.
because that was probably 2016 when I watched the like first 2 episodes.
Yeah, I hate it when that happens. Um, that leaves one final show on my list of shows that I've watched. So, do you have anything you'd like to add before I get into this one?
I do not.
Okay. So, a while back when we were on Assassin's Creed, we talked about Black Flag. I shouldn't say we talked about Black Flag. I asked you if you've played it and you said no. And it kind of made me sad because it's about pirates. And I kind of love pirates, and um Hulu again coming up clutch has a great show about pirates called Black Sails. Um it is completed. It's over. And I want to say this show actually was uh, a Stars show, I think.
That would make sense.
Yeah, it's a Stars TV series. Um, but it's a very 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 interesting story about pirates. It's actually, ooh, I don't know if I want to say that because when I found out through the story, kind of it kind of made me happy. But it's a prequel to a somewhat well knownish pirate treasure story. Um, and it's a very interesting take on said story. But basically, you follow Captain Flint and his um, piracy um, adventures. It takes place a lot in the Caribbean. Um, Man, for the life of me, I can't remember what the city or island was called. Um, but basically, Captain Flint was a part of the British Navy who was sent to this island that was controlled by the English as like a trading post to kind of like get the pirate problem in check, and then kind of got screwed over by his you know um, superiors and actually became a pirate himself. And it's super interesting. It contains, again, I don't want to like spoil anything, but there are some cool like piratey characters that you probably know of in the show, and it's like pretty awesome, pretty brutal at points. The sailing scenes and like the open water stuff is super cool. Um, they have times where they're like sailing up to the Carolinas and stuff, so that's a pretty cool aspect. Um, but it is a stars show, so like the first season is littered with just unnecessary like boobs everywhere for like no reason, which not
Pirate
really
boobs.
like, I mean, it's fitting I guess for a pirate show, I guess. I'm not
Yeah,
a pirate so I couldn't tell, but like
it's historically accurate. I was
yeah.
there.
But I mean, like, I mean, I don't know. It's a lot of it. It was just like, oh, okay, I get it. It's a star show. They must have like a quota of boob scenes that they have to get in every episode. But after the first season, that part kind of like goes away. So
Always happens like that.
yeah, I mean, it's like, oh, we gotta maybe if we just put a lot of boobs in it, a lot of people will watch it. Like,
I think it hooks a certain demographic of watch viewers.
yeah. But I mean, it's totally unnecessary because the story and like other content of the show is very strong, and I feel like it doesn't need that, as a gimmick or whatever to get viewers. Um, but yeah, once you activate your Hulu account again, this should creep up to the top of your list because was a really good show.
There's always time for a good pirate show or movie, so I might have to do that one sooner than later.
Yeah, I like when we went on vacation to the Outer Banks.
Is that why you go there? You just pretend you're a
Yes,
pirate the whole time?
exactly. You nailed it. Um, but no, they talk about um, I think it's Hatteras Island or Manteo or whatever. But those are relatively close to the place we stay. Maybe like a
Booty Bay.
30-minute drive from where we typically stay when we go on vacation. And I was just like, this year we didn't really do too much, obviously, because COVID. So we just kind of like hung out at the beach and stuff. But like before COVID hit, I was like, oh, I want to go to all these piratey places down there because I didn't even realize that like that was a thing that happened around here very often. Because I'm kind of like dumb apparently. But yeah, I don't know, man. I'm not like a big fan of being out on the open water, but watching the show, I was like, dude, being a pirate would actually be kind of cool. Like, I kind of want to be a pirate.
There's an allure there for sure. Hence everyone wants to be Johnny Depp, just sailing in the port, stepping off the mast as your ship sinks.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Completely rum dum.
Yep. But that wraps up my list of period pieces that I've actually watched, at least partially. But I think all of the shows that we just talked about, with the exception of Nightfall and Barbarians, I've watched all the way through. Which now that I'm looking at my list and seeing that we're approaching our 2-hour mark, um, I've watched a lot of period pieces.
Yeah, and I mean, we definitely followed like a theme of period pieces because we didn't even get into like we stuck to like historic ones or even like historic fantasy ones. We didn't get into the past 100-year period pieces and like how much fun those can be. And we've touched
Well,
on that before.
I do have there's still 3 left on the list of ones I haven't watched yet, but want to. And I'm surprised that you haven't mentioned one specific one.
Hmm. Is it in my sphere of everything else I talked about?
Not anything that we've talked about so far,
Hmm. I have a
but
bunch of like
it's
random movies that fit into like Greek or Roman times, but no shows left.
would you consider a show like Chernobyl a period piece?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm
that's it.
shocked that you haven't brought that up.
It was outside of my theme.
Mm. Yeah, that's one of the 3 on my list of shows that I haven't watched yet, but want to. But
You haven't
sadly,
watched Chernobyl?
dude, I do not have HBO. I say this every time we talk about it,
You don't need HBO.
but yeah,
No, I don't think you do.
what's it on then?
HBO.
Yep. So unfortunately, unless I get permission to the Village HBO account that I've heard of, um, yeah, I'll have to go to like Family Video and rent the DVDs or something like an animal.
And start a free trial of HBO on your Amazon Prime account for 7 days. Watch it.
Oh, intriguing.
And you can probably do the same thing with Hulu because they all have those HBO stars
Oh
plug.
yeah, that's right. There you can get HBO shows on Hulu if you pay a little more. Another
It-
HBO show, speaking of, is Band of Brothers that I kind of like really want to watch.
yeah, I need to watch that.
Yeah,
I mean, I would. I mean, if if you ever get tired, actually no, you should just ditch Hulu for a little bit. Sign up for HBO, like the $15 a month it is. Add it to your Hulu, and just watch so many freaking shows
I know
that are
there's
just they're just classics. Like
yeah.
It's
There,
unbelievable.
the list of shows that I want to watch just from HBO alone is at like eye-boggling. It's like insane. It's
Yeah,
huge.
it's nuts.
But why don't you tell me a little bit of what I'm missing from Chernobyl?
About Chernobyl,
Yeah,
what you're missing?
yeah.
Well,
What makes it such a great show that fits into the period piece aspect?
uh so the acting's great, and it's set in Russia, so they do a good job at portraying, as the show portrays it, obviously, because Russia, they're people too, but the haphazardness and the lack of care, I guess, and their willingness to kind of cover this up and treat it like it's no big deal. They did a good job kind of like catching that. Um, and also, it happened in a kind of rural area of, you know, Eastern Europe. And I think they did a good job capturing that, because like at one point the fire department shows up to put out the fire of what happened, and
Right.
the the hopelessness of this fire, this fire department of this little town trying to put out this thing that's never been like seen before or encountered before. It was really cool. It's one of those that has kind of like a film grain on it.
Mm,
I think just because to capture the gloomy effect of, one, Eastern Europe, two, a nuclear meltdown.
right.
Um, so
What if
yeah,
we actually like went to Eastern Europe or Russia and just everything literally was just gray? Like all these shows and movies portray.
I think parts of it might be, but also the opposite. It's probably very, maybe creepily the same as everywhere else, but
Yeah,
maybe not. I don't know. I don't know what Hollywood wants me to think. They want me to think it's all just depressing and gray and the Russians are bad.
right. Yeah,
But
so I mean, who doesn't
it's a good
love a
one.
good like nuclear disaster show, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it's not completely accurate. They do some things for dramatic effect, but the way they set up this telling of the events, and diving into the characters that are very much affected by what happened, and it's almost like a horror too. We could have fit it into our October themes a little bit, because man, I might have mentioned it. I can't remember, but it's scary at points and just terrifying on a certain level. But it's a solid watch. It's 10 episodes,
Oh,
and
nice.
it keeps you captivated. And the whole time you're also like that happened. Like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, it's just one season, right? It's just one of those
Yes.
one-offs.
Yep. It might even
Right.
be 8 episodes.
Oh, nice. It's definitely up there, and uh, every every other week, I'm always like, oh, whatever. I'm just gonna sign up for HBO. It's like $15. It's not that big of a deal.
It's 5 episodes.
Oh, hour long.
Yep.
Okay, so it's like a just a
A-
really long movie broken up.
Hour hour five about an hour and 5 minutes each, so it's a full hour. Um,
Nice. Those
so
extra 8 minutes make a big difference.
dude, it does. And I mean, you know, people say things are an hour, but are they 40 minutes? Are they a full hour? It does make a difference.
Yeah, but yeah, that's definitely one of those shows, along with True Detective, obviously, that we've talked about a little bit before. That is just like, and Westworld, and obviously, like, I haven't seen Game of Thrones. I'm like one of two people in America, or the world, I should say, that hasn't watched Game of Thrones. But the list goes on and on of reasons to just like cough up the $15 a month and just get HBO.
I say do it.
Plus,
100% do it.
we all know the real reason that I want HBO.
to watch the young Pope,
Dude, how did you know?
because that show's awesome and
No,
Jude
bro.
Law kicks ass.
This little movie called The Snyder Cut.
Is that out or it's going to be out?
Not yet. It will be out on HBO
Look,
Max.
that's your in.
I know.
That's your freaking in.
Jordan, I don't know if you're listening, but whenever the Snyder Cut releases, you better believe that we're going to do like a 5 hour long podcast episode where all we do is fanboy out about the Snyder Cut.
Do they know when it's coming out?
I think sometime next year in 2021. Apparently, they did some like reshooting or are going to be doing some reshooting. And they've done a lot of stuff in post and stuff. But yeah, I'm super excited about that. But that's a completely different topic than what we're talking about. Yeah, so the last show on my list of ones I haven't really watched yet, which is I guess kind of a lie because I've seen 2 episodes, but it is Peaky Blinders, and I've heard nothing but great things. And the 2 episodes I watched, honestly, were really really good. It just got pushed down on the list for whatever reason. But have you ever seen Peaky Blinders?
I think I watched the first episode, but it was way too late at night and I just fell asleep. But I want to watch it more and more and more and more. And how many seasons are there?
I want to say like a decent amount.
Let's see here. 2013 was the first episode. Five seasons,
Yeah.
30 episodes. So that's
Yeah.
not terrible.
No, it's a nice chunk. It'll keep you busy for a while. So
Yeah, that's a
watch
I
The
think
Boys first. That's only 2
yeah.
seasons.
Uh,
You can pound it out in like 2 weeks because Erin, I believe she would watch that with you and probably be entertained. And then you can start on this giant list of shows that we talked about tonight.
okay, I guess I'll watch The Boys since finished Bly Manor. Sign
Yeah,
up to our
man.
Patreon so you can get the exclusive pre-episode. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, we basically had like a mini episode before we started recording this about Bly Manor, which we weren't actually recording, so we're both kind of sad about. But and that's a whole other thing that we could talk about. We could have a follow up to our Hill House with a Bly Manor episode.
Next October.
Yep. Well, okay, so we did Hill House 2 years after Hill House release. So come back in 2022, and we'll for Halloween we'll talk about Bly Manor.
Well, ultimately, it depends on when the next season comes out.
Oh, true. Yeah, that
Because
works.
we did Hill House, leading up to Bly Manor. So then we should do Bly Manor leading up to whatever the next one was gonna be called.
Yeah.
Something cool and creepy.
Yeah. What other terms are there for houses?
Estate.
That's exactly what I was thinking. So you
Um,
stole the word right out of my
the
mouth.
haunting of the Courtney estate.
Yikes. We're not.
Yikes!
That's not happening. So
It's just Children of the Corn
true.
or Signs.
Oh yeah. But yeah. So I've had Peaky Blinders recommended to me countless times, and the 2 episodes I watched were really really interesting. But I think I kind of like fell into the same trap that you did, where I kind of watched these later at night and on nights where I was particularly tired for whatever reason.
Right.
So, but I mean, it's a really cool like gangster drama set in the 1920s ish, if I'm remembering right.
Yeah, and it's
Um,
England, isn't it?
I
London.
want to say, okay, so I'm looking here, post-war Birmingham. So yeah, Birmingham,
Yeah, yeah,
England.
it's in Britain. Yeah, so no,
Um,
and I like that actor too.
yes, I don't recall his name, but he was in 28 Days Later and handful of other things, and he's a phenomenal actor.
Cillian Murphy. He's not the Scarecrow, is he, in The Dark Knight?
Yes, he is.
Okay, yeah. That
Yeah,
would be
so
him.
this is definitely going to go back on my list of things to watch for sure.
He's in an upcoming movie called A Quiet Place Part 2.
Oh, a little movie called A Quiet Place Part 2, huh? A very loud place.
Yeah. Loud, scary things. We gotta
Oh,
stop talking about
this
scary
project
stuff.
was abandoned, but he was also supposed to play a character in Hippie Hippie Shake. What a great title.
That would be abandoned. Whoa, Tom Hardy is in Peaky Blinders?
What? I must not have gotten that far.
Dude, no way. No, yeah, Peaky Blinders cast. He's like listed as the 6th person. What is happening?
Hey, that's
It,
really cool. I love Tom Hardy.
I know this series keeps creeping up my list.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of Tom Hardy and movies,
I mean,
which
Tom.
we weren't. Yeah. Speaking of Tom and movies, which we weren't speaking of movies, and I don't think I've really talked much about movies myself on this podcast yet. But the movie Lawless that Tom Hardy was in with Shia LaBeouf was so good, and that I guess we could consider that a period piece too. Back in the old
Yes, sir.
Prohibition days, running the moonshine. That movie was so good.
Wow. Dude, get HBO and watch Boardwalk Empire.
Oh,
All
I've heard
it's
about that
all
show.
about that. It's a great period piece. Now that you mention it, um, about prohibition, politics of the time, cops and gangsters. It's great,
Nice.
and it's
Yeah,
got
dude. Again, just another tally on the count of reasons why I need to get HBO.
yeah. I mean, if you need to sacrifice a service for it, totally worth it. I mean, I would sacrifice if I hadn't seen any of these shows on HBO, I would sacrifice Netflix or Hulu.
Hmm. That's pretty powerful.
I mean, in college, it's all I had.
It's a powerful statement.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, to me, they are the originator of this,
Was the,
you know,
the modern day series?
yeah, the modern day series, like the production level, the quality, the acting, all that. Like, to me, they pioneered what is now very commonplace. And if it isn't that, it sucks.
I vaguely remember, like back in the day, my parents used to watch a show called Oz, I believe, on HBO.
That's like their notable first big hit.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely agree with you where like they were pioneering a whole different type of television experience, moving away from your basic cable sitcoms and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, and I don't know. To me, the more you think about it, they were Netflix before Netflix was a thing because you paid extra through a median for this service that produces content. So you have cable or
Yeah,
dish, you pay extra for HBO. You
yeah,
have the internet, you pay extra for Netflix.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Because they
and
would still like play movies and stuff, but then they also created their
correct.
own
Yeah.
content like Oz and what all the things that have come down the road since then.
Yeah. So yeah, they wanted to branch out, do something different. So I feel like they kind of started all of it. I think Netflix, they were the whole like movie rental thing, and then they came around
Hmm.
to the quality aspect of HBO.
Yeah, because I definitely have memories of like picking out movies for Netflix to mail me.
Yep. Right. So yeah, they started where it's like, hey, we're gonna like, cut the cord and pay for Netflix so you can watch stuff and not wait for it on TV or go to the the Blockbuster.
Yeah.
Um yeah, so yeah, that's a good point. Good job, Nick. Um but yeah, I
Yeah,
guess we're
that pretty much covers, everything that I had as far as, shows I've watched and ones I've wanted to watch. So, yeah, I don't know. Do you have anything else to add? Anything else you want to say about our beloved genre?
um not that anything couldn't just like keep going. I mean, there's gonna be on the lookout in the coming episodes. There will be a part two to period pieces for sure.
I will say, like, I guess my recommendation for our listeners would be, if you've never been intrigued or interested in checking out uh, shows or movies from this genre, um, I would definitely, recommend giving it a shot. Whether you find something that's, you know between the 1920s and 1940s, like gangsterish related, or if you find some old, like, even, I guess, could you even, I mean, I don't want to combine genres, and like Band of Brothers really is like a war show, or like Saving Private Ryan's like a war movie, but like, and technically I guess they're also period dramas, right?
Yeah, they're well, yeah, they're focused for sure,
Like,
but
if you like things like Saving Private Ryan, or like, insert whatever World War II movie or show, or um chances are you'll probably enjoy aspects of some of the other shows that we've talked about that are not war related, like the fur trading pieces, or like pirate type shows, or the Roman Empire rise and downfall, or like medieval type stuff. All of the same aspects that make a movie like Saving Private Ryan so enjoyable are found in these other shows. So, like, I definitely recommend you branching out if you haven't seen any of these before. And if you have, yeah, let us know if, like, which shows we talked about tonight that you've watched or seen and enjoyed, or what you didn't like about them, or if we left some obvious shows or movies out that you really enjoyed that you think fit the period piece, genre. you know Let us know in the comments, because I'm always looking for stuff to add, and clearly I love this genre.
and I think another thing that would be a good takeaway is just the knowing that this is a genre of content, and I think some people might watch these shows. Maybe they're really interested in Roman times. Maybe they just happen to like really like pirate shows. Um, but maybe step back and like, is there something else about these shows that you do like that is more kind of that would lead you into other period pieces? Because I mean, we like period pieces all across the board because there's elements to that type of show that is important and good to watch. So maybe it isn't you don't just like, the 1920s. You like the 1920s, but this style of telling stories and building worlds that might lead you to a lot of other shows, clearly.
Yeah, for sure. Don't be afraid to branch out and try new things. I sound like a show hippie or something. um but yeah, I don't know.
just just
I
just branch out,
Yeah, bro. Just
try some new
try it
things.
all, man. Just love it all, bro. But yeah, I mean, that's all I got. I don't know. Sounds like that's all you got too.
Yeah, not without like kind of going into a whole another episode.
Right.
That's all
And
I have.
I want to say this might be a record for us.
Yeah, it
lengthwise.
is.
So
Yeah, it
maybe
is.
we should wrap this up. If
Call
you
it. Call it.
we're calling it. If you stuck around this long, thank you so much. This was a really long episode, but it was a really fun chat, I think, and hopefully you're able to take something away from it. If you haven't taken anything away from it, let this be the one thing. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, which we will throw a link to in our Instagram and Facebook posts. And if you don't follow us on the other social medias, you can find us at Showboys Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. On Facebook, our page is facebook.com/Showboys Podcast. You can listen to our episodes on Anchor FM, Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts, pretty much anywhere that you can get podcasts. And you can also listen to our episodes on the YouTube. So
Peace out.
Are we cueing the music, or did we
Cue
do
the
that
music.
before?
Nah, cue the music. Peace out, Girl Scouts. Have a great night.
Watch our Mandalorian, or listen to our Mandalorian companion series.
It is time to go watch The Mandalorian.
Yes. Oh, it is. Goodbye, Craig.
Later, Craig. How do we get rid of Craig again? Just ask him to leave, or should we just forcibly remove him?
Let's get him out of here.